So fellas, we've covered the best horror sequels and the worst horror sequels, so I think it's only fair that we look at some underrated horror sequels. These are sequels that sometimes might get forgotten, or when they were released they weren't received positively, but over time the reception has changed. These aren't in any particular order, and to start off I'm going with A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This year will be the 40th anniversary of Freddy's Revenge, and I have booked tickets to see it in cinema next week, which I am looking forward to. I feel like this one is often forgotten as it's sandwiched between the best films in the series, with the first film and Dream Warriors. And then it's not as awful as later films where people only remember them because of how bad they are. But there is a lot to love about Freddy's Revenge. I really like the body horror aspect of the film. I think it was an interesting direction to take the sequel in. You have Freddy trying to possess the main character Jesse, which leads to some scenes of amazing practical effects and body horror, such as when he physically rips himself out of Jesse. That just looks incredible. And I love when he rips off his own scalp to show his brain. They still treat Freddy seriously and like he is still a threat, instead of the joke that he became in the later films. I think he is still pretty scary and dark in this one. He does have the occasional one-liner, but they're not as cheesy as later ones, and they're more sinister, I think. The pool scene is great too, when Freddy racks up an insane body count, and I think it's one of the most memorable scenes in the franchise. The film did later become a cult classic, especially within the gay community, as critics reassessed the film and noticed the homoerotic themes and subject material, which is honestly a really cool thing to include in a sequel to a beloved horror film within the 80s. Overall, it's not the best in the franchise, but I do think it's a pretty decent sequel. Up next is Predator 2. The first Predator is one of my favourite films, so finding out there was a second one blew my mind as a kid. I had to buy it straight away, and I did. I saw online that a lot of people didn't like it, which confused me when I watched it, as I thought it was awesome. Yeah, it's not as good as the first, since that is hard to top, but it's still a really fun time. I really like that they changed up the setting and put the Predator in a city, which is Los Angeles. It provided for some really cool moments such as the train sequence and seeing the Predator kill drug cartel members. The change in protagonist worked too, as we went from Arnold to Danny Glover as Mike Harrigan, a more relatable and down-to-earth police officer. The film also introduced more weapons for the Predator to use, such as the spear and disc, and it added a lot to the honor system of the Predator, like when he doesn't kill the woman because she's pregnant, and he won't kill a child. It's crazy to think that an alien that hunts for sport has more morals than the US president. Anyway, the climactic battle is fantastic. We actually get to see inside of a Predator ship, where we see the xenomorph skull and a shitload of other Predators. This scene had me freaking out as a kid. It also led to this great behind the scenes video of all the Predators dancing. I love this film, man. We're going to talk about 28 Weeks Later now. It was always going to be hard for 28 Weeks Later to top the first film, as it was just so good and it brought the zombie genre back to life, even though they are technically just infected. However, 28 Weeks Later is a pretty solid film in its own right. I think the opening is incredible and intense, and it is still one of the best openings to a horror film. Seeing Don run to the boat as all the infected start chasing him and the score kicks in never fails to raise the hair on my neck. It's a great sequence. The film never reaches the heights of this opening, but there's still a lot of good stuff. I think the characters are likable and interesting, except for the kids, they do annoy me sometimes. It definitely helps that the film has a great cast that includes Jeremy Renner, Rose Byrne, Robert Carlyle, and Idris Elba, a British actor doing an American accent in a British film. Yeah, it's not a great accent. 28 Weeks Later is a lot more action-packed than the first, but it does still have an emotional focus, which the series is known for. Don is a complex character and Robert Carlyle is great as always. It's a shame that 28 years later pretty much ignores the ending of this one, as it shows even the franchise kind of forgot it. But I do think it's a decent film, and a worthy sequel. We're going to cover a sequel to one of my favourite films now, and that is The Fly 2. The first film is an absolute masterpiece. The body horror is some of the best in cinema history, and it didn't really need a sequel. Does The Fly 2 justify its existence? Probably not, but I do still find the film to be entertaining. It's mainly a film that is carried by its strong practical effects and gore. The final act is filled with so much violence, which looks amazing and is a good enough reason to watch the film. It doesn't really have an emotional core or great characters like the first film, but there is enough to keep you invested. The scene with the dog was heartbreaking though, I will admit that. And the villain is very unlikable, so it's really satisfying when he is eventually killed. It does also have a nice ending for the characters, which I thought fit the story. This next entry probably should have been on my list for my guilty pleasure horror films, but who cares, I'm putting it as a underrated, and that is Alien Resurrection. This is by no means a good film, and is probably the worst on this list, but I find it so entertaining. I also prefer this to Prometheus and Covenant. Those two obviously are much better made films, but I find them boring and I hate the revelation that the xenomorphs were made by the android David. It was also a crime to see a CGI xenomorph. Resurrection, on the other hand, is complete dumb fun. It's full of great action sequences, such as the underwater scene. I actually think that's a really good scene. And the cast clearly know it's cheesy, so they're just having fun. Especially Ron Perlman, he just chews up every scene he is in. Ripley having the acidic alien blood is dumb, but honestly it just adds to the campy nature of the film. I always love to stick this one on if I've had a few drinks, as it's such a brainless viewing. I do also like the look of the film. I think the production design and cinematography gives it a distinct feeling that helps it stand out compared to the rest of the franchise. I can't talk about this film without mentioning the newborn. It's so stupid and the design is weird, but I like it. Overall, Resurrection is just a brainless fun time. Insidious 3 is next, and I know this is a prequel, not a sequel, but they chose to put 3 in the title. And we all know that canonically, in number lore, 3 comes after 2, so it's a sequel and therefore Insidious 3 can be on this list. For those struggling with maths, you're welcome. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the Insidious franchise. I do like the lore with the demons and the fervor, but I think they're just perfect examples of the jump scare trend. The third is no different, but I think it's handled a lot better in this one. Insidious 3 is more creepy than the previous 2 films, especially the second, that was shit. I feel like they built up a lot more tension before the jump scares, and the scenes felt a lot more unsettling and unnerving. This is definitely due to the man who can't breathe. For me personally, he's the most creepy and unnerving villain in the franchise. However, he has easily been forgotten. He's just such a gross and sickly being that preys on a vulnerable girl. He just unsettles me. I really like the characters too. Quinn is an interesting protagonist, and I like the dynamic with her dad. Lin Shaye returns and is great as always, but we get to see more depth added to her character, and we see some vulnerability. This was Leigh Whannell's directorial debut. He previously wrote the other 2 films and even the Saw films, but this was his first time directing, and he did a solid job of making this his own and making it stand out compared to the other 2. I'm going to deceive you guys now, as this one isn't a film but is instead a comic book, and that is Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. There was originally a 12-page treatment for a film, but due to creative differences between New Line Cinema and Bruce Campbell, it was scrapped. Therefore, it was instead turned into a 6-issue comic series. The story is set after the 2003 film, and follows Ash moving to the S-Smart branch in Crystal Lake. Here, Freddy again manipulates Jason into getting the Necronomicon, so he can use his powers in the real world. This leads to a clash between the 3, where Ash wins, obviously because he's just that good. It's a crazy story, but the series had already long jumped the shark, so who cares? It's kind of the big bombastic story you want to see in a crossover. I think seeing Freddy use his dream powers in the real world is a cool idea, and seeing Ash fight these 2 horror legends is a dream come true. There's plenty of violence to enjoy, as with comics they can be as violent as they want. They don't have to worry about censorship, as much as films do. The reason I'm saying this is underrated is simply due to the fact that it's a comic book, so it's not as well known and not as many people have viewed it. It's by no means a bad sequel, as I really enjoy it. It was followed up by Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, the Nightmare Warriors, but that wasn't as good. It's just a shame we never got the film adaptation. Finally, I'm going to cheat and include an entire franchise, and that is the Hatchet series. Hatchet is a very underrated horror series, which I think deserves more love. It's a throwback and love letter to the slashers of the 80s, and even has a lot of those stars making cameo appearances. The kills in these films are so creative, and the gore is just amazing, with loads of guts and blood splatter. I think the most underrated film is the fourth film, which is titled Victor Crowley. I never even knew it had released until like 2 years after, when I saw it on Amazon Prime and put it on straight away. I really like the character of Dylan in the fourth film, as he started off annoying, but eventually he became quite funny and likeable, and even heroic. The third film is definitely the weakest in the series, as it's the only one not to be directed by series creator Adam Green, but it's still a decent watch with plenty of violent kills. I really love the character of Victor Crowley too. He is obviously a homage to Jason Voorhees, with a similar tragic backstory, and he's even portrayed by Kane Hodder. You get to see him kill both Robert Englund and Tony Todd, which is awesome for horror fans. I do think Victor Crowley deserves the same love as other horror icons, and so does the series as a whole. So that's my list of underrated horror sequels, but before we end, I would like to say a quick thank you for the support recently. You guys have helped me reach nearly 350 subs, and the reception to my videos has been great. I did want to make more videos this month, but I've started my final year of uni now, and I'm working on my FMP, which is a lot more work than I thought it would be, and I also work in the evenings, so it's hard to find time to make the videos, but I love to do them as I find them relaxing. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys, as it means a lot. So if you guys have any underrated horror sequels that you enjoy, feel free to let me know in the comments, and as usual, thanks for watching fellas.